is the part 2 for the interview series, and more videos will come for sure, but it might take some more time. Uh, on your screen, the blog you see, this is my blog on the Azure interview questions, and we'll go ahead and talk about the questions and answers. So let's go. Hello everyone, my name is Arun, and let's get started. So we have discussed 10 questions in the previous video. Now 10 more questions are there for you guys. So question 1 and question 2, hope it seems familiar to you if you've been working with Azure. Not for long, even though you guys should be familiar with these two domains. Explain the fault domain and explain the update domain. If you have created the availability set, you know we got two kinds of domain there, update domain and fault domain, right? And fault domain is all about the fault that could happen, okay, maybe related to the power or switches or anything. And update domain is all about the maintenance done by the Azure. So you need to place your VMs inside these two domains so that your VM should not go down at the same time. Okay, so I'm just giving you the gist. Videos has already been covered on availability set, the structural difference and everything. So these are the two questions, and you need to explain the way I'm telling you. So don't talk about only fault domain or update domain. Give your interviewer the exact picture. Okay, talk about availability set, then talk about fault domain, and then update domain. Explain how it works. All right, now let's go ahead and see what is the next question we have. Okay, so it is, what is blob and how many types are there in Azure? This thing we covered under the storage account. We do have a wonderful blog written for that, and also the video is there on the Pachehra Talks channel. So it says, what is blob? Well, blob, it's binary large objects, and it is the unstructured data. Okay, this is the storage service for unstructured data provided by Azure. Now they say how many types are there in Azure. Well, there are three types. Basically, there are two, but the append blobs is more like for the append purposes, but they are actually the block blobs. So we have block blobs and we have page blobs. Block blobs are more like, text and binary data, the blocks of data. Page blob is more like random access files, like your VHDs. All your VHDs are the page blobs. Okay. And the append blobs is more like it will not override, but it'll keep on appending for the logging purposes. Okay, you can read more on my blog and the video in the same channel. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what is the question 4 we have, and there's the link for the storage account. The next question is difference between AV set and AV zone. Well, that has been covered in quite a detail under architectural concepts, and you can see under this, let me open this for you guys so that you would see. And if I open this is the video. Hold on, this is the video where it has been covered. You can see and check that, but here I want to show you availability set and availability zone. Well, it's a logical grouping capability for VMs where VMs are placed between different fault and update domains. Those were our first questions. And zone is about placing the VM inside different zones that would be actually inside the same region. So your virtual network is there inside a region, not inside a zone. So it is like your virtual network extended to all the regions which is there inside the all the zones which is there inside the availability reach availability. I'm sorry. So it means your virtual network extended to all the zones inside the regions. Okay, so it is more like you're placing one VM in availability zone 1 and another VM in availability zone 2. These two are totally different physical locations, maybe hundreds of miles of difference between these two. But if you talk about availability set, it is there inside the same data center, but they are separated with the help of fault and update domains. You can see we got 20 update domain and 3 fault domain, and it depends region to region. You can have 2 zones, maybe 3, maybe 1, as per the region. But the SLA that matters, availability set provides 99.95, but the zone 99.99. Okay, we need standard load balancer to support, and here we need basic. And availability set only protect you from the hardware failures within the data center. That is very important. But zone protect from entire data center failure, because another VM is spinning in a different zone, which is entirely different physical location. Cool. All right. Another question is, what is service principal? If you have contributor access, can you create service principal? Okay, well, basically, service principal is just an identity which has some role attached to it. Okay, it is more like you just create an app and you register it with Azure AD and you provide some role access to it, and you would have secrets for that particular application that you can use along with the app ID to assign permissions or to assign access to something. It is more like you might have some automated tools, you might have some hosted services or some application which require access to the Azure resources. Of course, you cannot put your credentials there. So you gotta provide the access with the help of some kind of identity that is known as service principal. Well, I tried to explain here. You can go ahead and read about it. It's an Azure Service Principal is an identity created for use with applications, hosted services, and automated tools to access Azure resources. As I said, this access is restricted by the roles assigned to the Service Principal, giving you control over which resources can be accessed. And here I have shown like how it is created. Now the other question is, if you have a contributor access, can you create Service Principal? Well, the obvious answer is no, because contributor does not give you rights to provide access to others, and in service principal we are actually creating. I'm sorry, somebody knocked the door. Okay, so where I was on the okay, contributor, you do not have the rights to provide access to other identities, but in service principal that's what we are doing. So if you have the contributor rights, you cannot create service principal. Question number 6, are there any restrictions on using IP address within these within subnets, and what's the smallest subnet that we can create? Well, we all know in Azure, when we create a VM just for the testing purpose or for a demo, just create a VM and you would find an virtual network, and the subnet creates automatically, and the first IP that VM gets is .4 always. It's because .0, .1, .2, .3 are reserved. So is the .255. Well, the 255 is network broadcast address that you cannot use, and .0 is network address that you cannot use. .1 is reserved by Azure for the default gateway, and .2 and .3 reserved by Azure to map the Azure DNS IPs to the VNet space. So in total, you got 5 IP addresses that you cannot use. Okay, so if 5 IP address you cannot use, that makes the smallest supported subnet is /29. That gives you how many IPs? 32 minus 29 is 3, then 2 into 2 into 2. That would be 8. Out of 8, 5 you cannot use, only 3 you can use. If you go /30, then you would have only 4 IPs, and you require at least 5 IPs so that you can give Azure and you would not have anything to use. So /29 is the smallest. Now let's go to the next question. How to reset the local admin password? Well, if you have never done that, on the Azure VM pane on the Azure portal under support and troubleshooting, you'll find password reset. You click there, you got two options: reset the RDP configuration and password reset. That's the place from where you reset the password for the local administrator. Okay. Now, how to reset the NIC? That's interesting. Well, it is more like if you go to this Microsoft Docs information, it will not give you any option to just click and reset like you do have in the other resources, but it is asking you to change or the IP address from dynamic to static. Then it will automatically reset it from the backend. Okay, that's how you can reset it. It actually refreshes it, I think, but this is what it mentioned: how to reset the network interface of for Azure Windows VM. That's how you can do it. Changing the type of the IP address. Okay, find out any IP address which is not in use, change the IP address to static and provide that IP address and save it. It will reset it. You can have a read about it, but I told you like how you can do it. Now this is for the classic. Okay, let's go to another question. Why we redeploy the VM and what it is? Well, where you find the password reset option in the support and troubleshooting, you also find one more option there with that is redeploy. Well, redeploy generally does nothing but deploys the VM to a different host. Okay, and why we need it? It is more like whenever you're facing difficulty accessing your VM through RDP, or your VM has got stuck under like starting or failure or stopping. In those situations where it could be the reason the backend host and your VM is not actually going hand in hand and your VM is go stuck, you can't do RDP. In those situations, you can try to redeploy a VM, which would actually change the host backend host of the VM, and hopefully your VM would be up and running. Okay, you can have a read what I have mentioned, but that's what the gist. It's like if you have been facing difficulties troubleshooting RDP connections or application access to Windows-based Azure VM, redeploying the VM may help. When you redeploy a VM, Azure will shut down the VM, move the VM to a new node within the Azure infrastructure, and then power it back on, retaining all your configuration options and associated resources. You will lose data on the temp disk. Okay, we can redeploy from Azure portal under support and troubleshoot. We talked about that. Now the last question for this blog is what all you will do if you are unable to RDP on your Azure VM. Okay, well, there are 8 things that I've mentioned. This I took from the MS documentation. You can reset the desktop configuration I told you on the password reset. You can check the NSG rules, whether the RDP is allowed or not. You can check the console logs. You can reset the NIC we just talked about. Question 7. You can check the resource health, reset the password, restart your VM, and redeploy VM. These are 8 steps that you can perform if you're not able to RDP your VM, and a couple of those we have discussed here already and in the past videos for sure. All right, let's meet in another video with some other questions. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.